Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. F. Scott Feil, and it's our 500th episode. This is crazy. I can't believe that a couple of dudes sitting around talking about education has come 500 episodes in 7 years, but here we are. And we wanted to do something big and bold and impactful for our 500th episode. And normally we interview healthcare providers, healthcare educators, healthcare students, and we don't often get to interview the people on the flip side of the coin, the patients. We've done it a handful of times, but this is one of those times where when I heard Jesi's story, I had to have her on. Jesi, thank you so much for taking the time for coming on to educate our audience on all things of your story, your empowerment, what you're up to these days, what you're doing. Please give us a little bit of an introduction and tell us your story.
Hey, thank you so much for sharing your platform with me as well. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I grew up in Northeastern Ohio, raced four-wheelers my whole life, never really struggled with any health issues um, until I broke my back and became a paraplegic. And that changed the whole game.
Yeah. Yeah. You said something on a recent podcast that I listened to that said, like, you are almost now in a better place, which is a complete mindset shift and something that is not easy to do. Tell us a little bit about that journey. What was that like as far as like all that you went through and then where you're at now coming out on the other side?
So when I grew up racing off-road, and when I turned 18, my parents were no longer footing the bill, so I stopped racing and went straight into work. And I started working in restaurants where I started drinking regularly, got involved with prescription pills, and really started going down a bad path. And so when I was 22, I got into a motorcycle accident. And that motorcycle accident, a woman made a U-turn in front of us. The driver of the bike didn't stop in time. He went through the back window, broke his leg. I went over her SUV, broke my back in two places. My chest collapsed, my ribs punctured my lungs, nicked my spinal cord. I have a TBI and I coded twice and had to be resuscitated.
Hmm.
And so I'm telling you, I never even broke a bone up until this point. And so it just completely, I went from being a non-disabled, completely healthy, healthy quote, I'm going to use air quotes on that because I was drinking every day. I was abusing prescription pills. Um, but a healthy individual to a wheelchair user. And I say that my paralysis, my spinal cord injury is my superpower. It changed my perspective of the world. It allowed me to actually view the world because a lot of times I'm overlooked. And so now it gives me the opportunity to observe. I observe human actions and the way that people operate. And I'm like, oh, that's how I don't want to move. How do we change this? And it's really allowed me to dive deep into why I made the decisions I made before I was injured. And now I get to help people get out of that cycle.
As a physical therapist, I just have to ask, tell us about your journey, your road to recovery, your work with physical therapy, and how that all kind of led you to where you're at now.
So I'm a what's considered a T4 complete paraplegic. I was enrolled in a clinical study whenever my accident happened and they fused my spine. They put something called a neuroscaffold in my spinal cord to reconnect the disconnect. So it's a small device and it dissolves within 6 months. I never met any of the markers in the trial. And so about 2 years in, I had gained 30 pounds. I was falling on the floor regularly. I could not get the floor transfer down, which is getting yourself from the floor back to your wheelchair, one of the hardest transfers to complete. And I just was frustrated and I was tired of being frustrated and sad and angry. So I found adaptive CrossFit and I started being mindful about my physical and mental diet. And so I started being very intentional about what I consumed and what I ate. And when I started actually putting intent behind those things, I started seeing improvements in my recovery. So that's when I was able to crawl and feel things. I feel when someone would hit my leg really hard. Fast forward to 2024, in February, the opportunity came for me to buy into a wellness facility. So we have cold plunge, infrared sauna, PEMF, Vibex, hyperbaric chamber, compression sleeves, red light. We're an all-encompassing recovery facility. I started sitting on the Vibex, which uses a circular vibration pattern rather than a vertical vibration pattern, and changed the game again. So I went from having the sensations I had to the guys were all standing on it. And I'm like, do you think I could sit on this thing? Will it be fine? I just had my second spinal revision back in August. So I'm a little bit like, oh my gosh, is it gonna knock my hardware loose? Am I gonna be okay? So I started sitting on it. And after my first session, I'm like, go get my leg braces out of the car. I feel like I could walk. I felt, I don't know how else to explain it besides I felt like I could get up out of my chair and walk. And so they got my leg braces and I was moving. I have KAFO leg braces. And so I was moving faster than I ever had, ever. And I'm like, whoa. So I've been sitting on it regularly. I've since in the last 5 months regained full sensation in my legs of hot and cold.
Wow.
So I feel what the cold and I question it a lot of times. I'm like, is that real? But no, it's real, very much so. And then now that summertime, I've noticed when I wear leggings in the sun, it's my legs get very uncomfortably hot. And I'm like, oh, wow, I'm actually starting to feel this. I felt that my legs got sunburned the other day. It was wild.
Yeah.
Someone leans their leg or puts their hand on my leg. I feel that immediately. There's no delay. The downside is I use something called Navina transanal irrigation. It's a digital irrigation system for your bowel evacuation. I don't like suppositories. They leave like a weird mucousy residue. It's annoying. It takes there's some people it takes up to 2 to 3 hours for them to do their bowel program.
Mm,
And you're looking at somebody spending 2 to 3 hours just to poop and have a bowel movement. That's up to 40 days a year of their life they're spending pooping. So
yeah.
I'm a big advocate for transanal irrigation and specifically the Navina because it's digital, it's easy, insurance covers it. It's amazing. But I feel that now. And it is weird.
Mm,
Like the water filling. I feel what it feels like. I use intermittent catheters, so I self-cath, and I feel the catheter go in, and it's so uncomfortable. But like, after 9 years, I feel,
right. That's wild. I
yeah.
mean, it's truly amazing. Like the story, the path, the journey. I again, just absolutely amazing. I cannot wait to see where you go with this and how far you take it. One of the things that's been most impressive to me is the mindset shift and the it almost like you flipped a switch and you were like, yeah, I'm struggling, I'm having trouble doing the transfers and things, but like, no, I'm gonna make this more. I'm gonna do more. I'm gonna be more. Tell me a little bit about that perspective, like the mindset shift you had to go through and the choice you had to make to do these things.
Well, at first it was very shallow. I was focused solely on the followers and growing the platform and getting the clout and feel bad for me because I'm a wheelchair user. I had a lot of entitlement because I was a wheelchair user and because society is so inaccessible because and I believe it's because I was non-disabled and I became disabled and now I don't have the same access to life that I did before. And it's a very real thing that over 50% of the country is inaccessible, but yet we're still one of the most accessible countries that I've been to in the world, and I've got to travel internationally. I feel so grateful that I'm a disabled person in America because it could be way worse. But that entitlement was real. The entire reason I started fitness was to be the wheelchair user to do the thing. What the thing was, I don't know what it was, but it was definitely a very shallow personal development journey in the beginning. It honestly wasn't until the pandemic. And I was traveling regularly speaking. I was on the US developmental team for wheelchair curling. I was traveling nonstop. And the pandemic happened and it made me stop. So now, the last 5 years, I've been running, 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 not forced to face my paralysis. Now I'm locked in the house for 4 months and I rent the basement from my parents. So now I'm locked in the basement for 4 months. And it gave me time to think. And I thought about everything from I've reflected on my past relationships because now I'm locked with my parents and I'm forced to see the way they communicate, how they operate. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to continue this, or oh, I love this trait from them. So I became very hyper aware about generational traits I was carrying forward. Um, I lost my mobility. My shoulders completely deteriorated on me. I was getting cortisone shots in them every 3 months just to be able to do my ADLs. So I couldn't transfer, I couldn't shower, I couldn't get dressed. I was struggling with all of it. And I wasn't understanding. I'm like, I'm working out, nothing's changing. What is going on? And then my cousin committed suicide. And the year previous, my almost a year to the date, it was like a year and a month later, my niece had committed suicide. So both times I felt this extreme jealousy that they no longer had to struggle. And I'm like, whoa, I should not be feeling jealousy that someone's life is over. And so I honestly, before I was injured, I was an atheist. And the day before my accident, I was saved at my ex-boyfriend's grandmother's funeral. And then when I coded, I saw my own grandmother. She told me, Jesse May, it's not your time. I can't stay with you. You can't stay with me. There's things you have to do and people to get back to. You have to go now. Sent me back. And that's the only reason I never killed myself because I knew I had a bigger mission. I just didn't know what it was. But I kept feeling this jealousy and I just wanted life to end. So I'm like, you know what, God, I haven't done anything for you. I've been living solely for me. I haven't poured into my faith that you saved me before this life-changing thing. I need you. I need strength. I need guidance. I need empowerment. And I just prayed. And from there, my life completely changed. I found different things. So that's around the time I found First Form, which is a supplement apparel company. There's so much more. It's a culture. It's an amazing culture just to try and be better. But when I went to First Form, I was talking to one of the guys there, and he looked at me. He's like, it sounds like you're just not eating enough protein. Have you ever thought about tracking your nutrition? And I was like, no. And so I started tracking my nutrition, and yeah, I was eating 30 to 60 grams of protein a day and working out and using my arms as legs. So now I'm putting myself in this constant muscle breakdown. My body, yeah, I'm still working out, but my body can't even repair from my ADLs, never mind adding that extra physical activity. And so because of that, it changed the whole game for me. And now I went from eating 30 to 60 grams of protein a day to 140 to 160 grams of protein a day. Like it is such a necessary macronutrient for us to be able to perform. And
Yeah.
I don't track my nutrition for dieting purposes. I track my nutrition for longevity of life.
Yeah, my doctor, I'm a big dude, right? And my doctor said you've got to eat more protein. I'm like, I mean, I love meat. There's only so much chicken I can chew though, over the course of a day. Like, so I actually had to go to protein powders and like kind of
Yeah.
increase my protein that way because it was the only way to get it. And I've never tracked anything or taken care of my health like and I'm in healthcare, right? So it's ridiculous. And now I'm slowly seeing that like, hey, if I want to be around for my kids, graduations and weddings and all those things, I got to start taking care of my own health, right? And do the things that I tell people to do, right? Live the way that I'm preaching, right? Practice what I preach. So tell me a little bit now about you've gone through all this. You're on this like amazing journey, this amazing comeback. What are you doing with it? What are you up to these days? Because you have so many things that you're doing that are just helping so many people. Tell us all about it.
You have so many facets. So
Yeah.
my biggest passion right now is freedom, longevity, and wellness. I love what we do at the Recovery Center. And I'm so grateful. The guys got really screwed over as they were building out. They were licensing with somebody. That person actually stole their money, didn't deliver on anything. So their seed money that they had to carry rent until they were covered it was non-existent. So a month in, they're like, we don't know how we're going to pay rent. We're looking for an investor. And that's when I got brought in. And so since we've created a licensing agreement to help other people build these facilities, acquire the modalities, be able to get the things from genuine people that just want to see you succeed. We're not here to screw you over. We're not here to steal your money because that's what happened to us. And we're trying to prevent this from happening to other people and carry the freedom brand on because freedom truly is in your longevity and wellness. If you have health ailments all throughout life, you're going to struggle. You're not going to feel free. Whereas when you take care of yourself and actually do the things for your longevity of wellness to reduce pain, help your body feel better, you're free. It's it's all about longevity, and that's kind of where I came from I started on the wheelchair side, and now I'm not in the wheelchair space as far as coaching or anything anymore. I'm totally focused on my non-disabled counterparts. You guys are our allies, and I don't know what happened. One day I was out and I looked around and I'm like, there's thousands of people here and I'm the only wheelchair user. Like, I've got to help. Why am I focused on that small community when this big community is what's going to actually help us? And so for a long time, I identified solely in the wheelchair space, which I know, like, as a PT, it's easy to do. You identify like anything when you're in a niche space, it's like I only identify by this space. So with that being said, I do have two organizations within the wheelchair community. The first is Wheel With Me Adapt Fit. It is the fitness app for wheelchair users by wheelchair users. It's myself and another personal trainer that uses a chair. Her and I just built this awesome platform. It's a downloadable app in the iOS store. We have everything from actual programming as far as strength programming in the gym, bed workouts, so resistance bands and body weight from bed. So anyone that has to wait for a caregiver, they can actually get some movement going while waiting. There's some mindfulness meditation, some motivational messages, and then there's an entire transfer series. So if people are struggling with getting a couch transfer, floor transfer, or a tub transfer, toilet, bed mobility, that's all in there. That is the one resource in there that's completely free because that's the biggest thing that excels independence. Um,
Yes.
yeah, 100%. And then I also have a nonprofit organization. We're a 501(c)(3) nonprofit called Wheel With Me Foundation. We serve the independence of wheelchair users right now through quarterly empowerment weeks where members of our community teach their skill or trade on Zoom. It's a week long. There's a different topic every evening. Most of them are recorded and uploaded on our YouTube. We've had everything from sex and disability to how to build a job resume and submit to jobs and communicate with employers about your disability. We also have a summer camp in July, which is super cool. It's an adult summer camp for adult wheelchair users. It's always impactful, always powerful. Some of the PT from Kelly Brush Foundation actually comes up for it. It's in Carrabassett Valley, Maine, and we have a little skills lab where we work on transfers and things like that as well. So it's honestly just a really cool weekend. And our ultimate goal is to build a transitional community. So essentially an apartment complex where wheelchair users teach each other how to be independent to integrate them back into society. Over 50% of the spinal cord injury population alone relies solely on government assistance for their independence. And if it's someone like me that was on government assistance for 7 years, I was making $1,400 a month. Because my disability payment was so high, I didn't qualify for Medicaid.
Yep.
So I only had Medicare. I still had to pay 20% of everything, meaning every month when I got bladder Botox, I was paying up to $600 just so I wouldn't pee myself. And it made life really unaffordable. And it wasn't until I went back to work that now I pay to have Medicaid. So I have full Medicaid as a working individual with a disability. And we're conditioned to believe that if you go to work, you lose all benefits. But it's like, if you have an actual disability, there's a lot out there that's
Yeah.
available to you to make you independent.
Yeah, it's a broken system. I mean, the whole healthcare system in the US is screwed, but
Oh,
that's why we started this. Like it's a broken system based off a broken educational system, and we're just trying to fix it. Like it's multifactorial. I'm not an expert, so I just get the experts on to talk about it to like, hey, maybe let's start thinking about ways that we can fix this broken system because it's not benefiting the people that it should be in the ways that it should be. And it's tough and it's getting worse. So, let's talk about that a little bit. Like you had a very impactful quote too about healthcare and healthcare providers. And it came down to, in its most simplest form, question everything.
yeah, yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that because I love that. I think that even as students, we need to be questioning things, my students hopefully get the critical thinking down to question things, and that's the whole point of what we do. But tell us more about your experience with that.
So you have to think about it this way. It's called a practice for a reason. Doctors truly are practicing. And again, it wasn't until I became an individual with a complex medical condition that's it's honestly, spinal cord injuries are unique.
Yeah.
Everyone is
Yep.
so different. I've only ever had, knock on one pressure sore, and it was when I first got out of the hospital and I fell asleep with my ankles on top of each other. The worst thing, my first year, 2 years of injury was burning myself in UTIs. But other than that, I didn't struggle. Well, I had C. diff too. My first year, the first year of
It's a
injury
little
was,
bumpy, a little
yeah, let's
bumpy.
back that up. The first year was really bumpy, but after I figured that out, and honestly, when I started going into my health and wellness and eating enough,
Yeah,
like the last 4 years of my injury, I've been injured 9 years. The last 4 years have been a breeze, have been a breeze. Besides breaking my spinal fusion and having to have two revisions, like that is my biggest health ailment is because I'm living life too much.
yeah,
Like I have no problems, but then you look in the community and they're like, my doctors don't believe what I'm saying. They don't know what's going on with me, especially the chronic illness community,
yeah,
which again, a lot of that comes back to a nutritional standpoint.
yeah,
And there's not enough focus in healthcare on nutrition as much as there is, let me give you this quick fix
yeah.
pharmaceutical. And
My
it's there's
wife's
got
my
to be
wife's a type 1 diabetic, so I completely hear where you're coming from on that.
yes.
Like just getting them to hear and listen, and realize how much of medicine is food and food is medicine, and like, yeah, America's stuck on those quick fixes.
And well, it's just that easy thing. And there a lot of doctors, when you talk to healthcare professionals, they're like, well, people won't do it. People won't do it. And they're already discrediting them. Well, it's like, what's your delivery like? It's like, hey, you could either poison your body with this pharmaceutical for the next 20, 30 years, or you can find an alternative. And when I got injured, my spinal cord injury is my superpower because it forced me to be hyper aware of when I got out of the hospital, they tried to hand me 13 different prescriptions. And instead of taking those prescriptions, I found natural remedies. So I use THC cannabis products. I use psilocybin for depression, and I use electric stimulation and standing frame to help with pain relief, nerve pain, circulation, and all these things that they wanted to prescribe me all these pills for.
Yeah,
And it's like, why are we not talking about alternative medicines? Oh, because that's not what makes a healthcare system
yeah,
money. Is it a healthcare system or is it a money system? And that was like the biggest red flag for me was the amount of pharmaceuticals without any alternative options. And so that was the first one. And then it was getting into my injury, talking to more people, realizing that, oh, well, you use intermittent catheters, so you're going to end up having a UTI. And it's like, about 3, 4 years in my injury, I found another catheter product that keeps a smooth insertion and smooth withdrawal, reducing microtrauma tears, reducing bacteria in the urethral environment, ultimately reducing UTIs. But yet here I'm out in the field, so I work for the company now. But because I'm so passionate about the product, I don't struggle with UTIs anymore. I got hospitalized for C. diff in my first year of injury.
yeah,
Like, if anyone's never heard of C. diff, you will never forget it if you ever get it. It is an intense and it's when the bacteria in your bowels and your colon, everything has been killed, and all the good and bad. And so you just literally poop nonstop, and you have to get antibiotics and get it taken care of, or it can kill you. It's like a serious thing, and it was all from UTIs. It all stemmed from UTIs. They never offered me another catheter. They just said, you use catheter products. This is how it works. But there's another product out there that's clinically proven to reduce it by 64%, and you don't want to implement it. And it's just like, I think because of the healthcare system, the hospital systems, these big things popping up, like here in the Carolinas, we have your Atrium, your Kaisers, things like this. These big hospital systems popping up are the culprit behind healthcare professionals not truly providing the healthcare. We have a systemic problem in medicine. And that's a problem for me because I wish someone would have told me, you have to pay attention to nutrition. Pay attention to how food makes your body feel. If I eat anything from the middle aisles of the grocery store, from like crackers, cookies, anything with processed sugar, alcohol, I get nerve pain in my side within 30 minutes. Within 30 minutes. You can't tell me that's not my body trying to reject that
right,
poison that I'm fueling it with, right?
right.
But you don't get that same reaction because your non-disabled body is not giving you these little cues because I believe because your whole body's functioning. There's a lot of places for it to dissipate. Whereas me, I get that nerve pain right at my T4 level.
Wild. I mean,
Mhm.
it's again, it shouldn't take an injury to force people to consider the signals that the body's giving it, right? And that, like you said, the middle aisles are pretty ridiculous. And I this is a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day, but like even something as simple as red dye, right? Like red dye 40, like, it's banned in most countries. And here we are putting it in just about everything, and my kids definitely act differently when they've had red dye versus when they haven't. We try to keep them off it because it's just such a bad experience for us when they have it, and it's like, I mean, it's not really worth it, like there's so many other better options out there. Let's shoot for those. And it's a shame because you have so many able-bodied Americans that are just like, whatever, I'll just get the quick fix, I'll just get the meds, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I think your message is super empowering, and it's super insightful because, like you said, your biggest issue right now is living life to its fullest. Like, that's a pretty good issue to have, right? Like, if that's the biggest problem, I think we're doing okay. So tell me a little bit then about, like, just from a patient standpoint, if you had to give people like a message of like encouragement, or like people that are going through rehab, or coming back from an injury, or working through a spinal cord injury, whatever it may be, what are some words of wisdom, or some tips, tricks, pointers, or just encouragement that you would give patients?
Stop trying to get back to where you came from and focus on being happy in your current state. You can't go back to the way it was before. There is no going back. There is no starting over and getting that full body back the way it was. And I think we hold on to this unrealistic reality. Even when I get upright, when my body decides to function. So my right leg is firing a little bit. I'm working on getting that knee to lock. I am very well aware that my gait will never be the same, that I will never move the same. But I'm also aware that this vessel is really incredible when you give it the proper things. You have to take care of your body physically, mentally, spiritually, all around. And we focus so much and get so lost in our day to day that we forget to actually take care of the vessel that's allowing us to live that day to day. And so then we get to a point where our body just shuts down and it doesn't want to function anymore. It's like, how did I get here? But you don't look back at your habits from the last 10 years. Again, when I lost my independence, I was 28 years old. I'm like, I'm supposed to live to be 80.
Yeah.
How am I want to be able to I don't want to rely on people. I don't want to wait for somebody to come help me. Like, I've got to be able to take care of myself. My spinal cord injury has been my superpower. I think that it made me hyper aware that nothing is permanent. Not my physical ability, not my health, not my wellness, but I could do everything in my power to keep it as long as possible. And that's the biggest message I want. I want your community to hear. Even if you don't currently have a health ailment, what you do right now matters for your health 5, 10, 15 years from now. And just because you're non-disabled in this moment, that is not permanent. I was non-disabled at one point in my life as well. And an accident happened, and they happen every single day. And if it's not a spinal cord injury, it could be a brain injury. If it's not a brain injury, it could be a stroke. I mean, there's so much out there that could happen to us that you've got to take care of yourself in your very best capacity. And if you don't know how, seek guidance. There's plenty coaches out here that actually have good information. Like, the whole reason I got into nutrition coaching is because I just want to help people to the longevity of their wellness. I don't care about weight loss. I don't care about muscle gain. I care about the longevity of your independence as a human being and trying to prevent health ailments from happening.
Yeah. Yeah, healthy aging in place, right? Like being able to live our best life at our home for the rest of our lives, right? If possible, that's the goal, right? I think if we focused on that and just, like you said, longevity, things could be a lot easier because it's not just like, oh, I have to do all this stuff all at once. It's like, no, you've got to make good decisions over a long period of time, and eventually those pay off, right? They craft the path for success in that.
And I think
So
that it's not, I really, because it's not talked about in society, right? We live in this instant world, we live in this right now. How often are we thinking about the future? But you're a parent, right? Like, you blink and your kids are grown.
Oh yeah.
and how quick they're out of diapers, how quick they're like, I think that being a parent makes you hyper aware of that, but you don't realize for yourself. You're only focused on your kids.
Yeah.
And so I really challenge the parents to take a look at your habits. All of you, like anyone listening right now, take a look at your habits and ask yourself, are my habits truly supporting the longevity of my wellness? Are they truly supporting who I want to be in my 50s, 60s, 70s? And if they aren't, then you've got to make some radical life changes to get into that place so you're supported for where you want to go and who you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great takeaway. Well, Jesse, let me ask this then. Let's ask for a bit of advice and words of wisdom you would give to the healthcare providers, the healthcare community. Like, what would you like to tell them to help them get better treatment, to help them connect with patients better? What kind of advice do you have for them?
You are not the all-knowing of everything. As much as you like
That's
to believe so, your college education didn't
Yeah.
make you superior in any way.
I'll
As
vouch for that one.
yeah,
I definitely don't know everything. I can tell you that for sure.
right. And a lot of times you get that it's more with the MD side, but you
Yeah.
get that behind your name and it's like all common sense kind of goes out the window of you may not understand this condition. You may have to trial and error. I wish that healthcare providers were more honest and upfront, especially with the chronically ill community about that. Just because it's like, hey, it's a shot in the dark. I honestly have no idea. I'm sorry. This is a rare thing. This isn't something I deal with every day. And this goes back to humans as a whole. We need to communicate with each other better.
Yeah.
Look at most failed marriages. Where did it first start failing? Communication of one partner not being satisfied didn't come through. The partner just expected the other person to understand why they weren't happy, right? Same idea with in the medical community. It's like just be real. Be like, yo, I'm gonna do my best to figure this out, but I don't know. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. I would have so much more respect for a doctor if they told me I don't know. Like my PCP is the business. The dude literally listens to me. I'm so in tune with my body. I broke my foot. I knew I broke my foot. And I was like, hey, I need to come in. I broke my foot. And he's like, not never question it. He's like, all right, you have an appointment. When I broke my spinal fusion in half, I knew immediately. I was like, I just broke my fusion again. I was like, hey, I broke my fusion in half. Do I need to go to you or urgent care? And he's like, come to me. And I went in and I saw it on the x-ray beforehand, but like having an ally as my PCP rather than somebody I feel like I'm constantly butting heads with,
Yeah.
it's been a complete game changer. Again, I don't struggle because when I do have an ailment, if I feel like a UTI is coming on, I send a message in my chart and he's like, yeah, drop off a urine sample. There's no argument, there's no fighting, there's no immediate prescription given to me. It's let's talk about this. Let's like do the tests and see. I get my blood work done every 6 months, no argument on that.
Yeah.
He reminds me, he's like, oh, we need to get your blood work done. Like it's amazing when you have an ally as your physician and care partner rather than somebody you feel like you're going against. And from the PT side, my PTs are still some of my best friends. My first original PT, she left the hospital system to do private practice, thriving. One of my best friends, really close with her. Um, my main PT that I still see to this day, especially post spinal op, and now that I'm getting some stuff back, I text him regularly and send him updates. Like your healthcare professionals truly want what's best for you.
Yeah.
It's you, as I'm coming from a patient side, a lot of times we have a really shitty attitude. And that attitude is what creates a lot of friction in that conversation. It's what leaves the patient feeling dissatisfied, leaves the healthcare professional feeling like, what can I do? It just creates so much. Whereas if there's just honest communication from the very get from both parties, and just real communication, not arguing, not raising the voice. Because patients, man, we get a little feisty sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think it comes back from both ends and being self-aware. Self-awareness just needs to be taught to society.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a quote unquote soft skill, right? But really it's hard. It can be difficult, and it's something that it's a hard pill to swallow, pun not intended on that one. It just it sucks to look internally sometimes and see that you're the problem, right? Like, oh, I'm not doing this the way I should be, or I'm not receiving things, or I've got a block up, or I've got an attitude, or whatever it may be. Sometimes you just have to look inside and be like, oh, all right, it's me, right? Because if you go through a couple of different providers and they're all telling you the same thing, like it's like, oh, at what point do I turn the mirror on me and say, here's the problem, right? And that goes on both sides, right? Like
100%.
if you have patients telling you, hey, maybe ease off on the attitude, man, like you might have an attitude problem, right? Like it just, like you said, self-awareness is huge, right? Communication skills huge. And these are all things that, we preach to our students, and we hope that they take that with them and they realize and they learn. And I hope this episode will shed light on that for both the providers and the patients and the students, because it is so valuable, right? Like healthcare in general, it still has care in it. It
Yeah.
has care, right? We should be caring. And in order to truly care, you've got to actively listen,
Mhm.
effectively communicate, and admit when you just don't know. And that's okay. Like I said, I was an English major before I was a PT, so it was a really weird transition for me to navigate. But you know, I put my ego at the door a long time ago because I just knew I'm never the smartest guy in the room. And that's okay, right? I'm okay with that. Because if I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm in the wrong room, first off, right? And second off, I don't have to be the smartest guy. I love leaning on people and pulling information from people and going to experts and picking their brains and just figuring things out. I am a problem solver, right? I love problem solving, but I don't always know the answer. So it's good to be able to admit that and kind of go forth and just like come at it with an open mind, come at every patient as a blank slate, and we're just going to figure this out, you know?
I think the other big barrier is the hospital systems and these systems because one patient complaint can put a ding on a doctor and then the doctor gets too many dings or the nurse. And it just sucks that people are so sensitive that they can't handle the truth and they can't handle honesty. And there just something needs to change there as well. The doctors needs more support from the actual system
Yeah.
itself. The clinicians need more support from the system itself to back them up when they stand their ground of honesty. We can't keep coddling people and their feelings. That's how we got to this place where we're at right now in society. And I am so tired of people's feelings being hurt. Get over it. You have to get over it. They're your feelings. Like it's the truth. If it's hurting your feelings, there's some validity behind it. So you need to acknowledge that validity and understand why it's making you feel that way. Again, it comes back to self-awareness.
Yep. Well, Jesse, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to just come on and give the patient perspective on a lot of these things. Like I said, your story is amazing. Your journey is just so inspiring. Normally, we end the episode by asking a question about higher education. We're not going to do that today. We're going to throw that out the window, and we're
Oh,
actually going to just ask you, where can people find you? Where can they follow you? And how can we support you?
oh, but I want the higher education
You want
question.
it? We'll
Yeah.
give it to you. The
What
the
is it?
question
I'll take it.
is, if you could change one aspect of higher education, whether it be, uh, graduate school or terminal degree level, whatever it may be, higher education in general, we know it's a broken system, but if you could change one aspect, what aspect would you change and how would you change it?
Um, I would change the political focus on things,
Yeah.
adding all this political bull crap of the pronouns and the acceptance and the furry, like, and this is just education as a whole again. But I think we're not focused enough on the actual content and meat and potatoes of what people are getting educated on, and we're too focused on being politically correct. And so then it's creating a disservice outside of that whenever these individuals go out into the real world and just really supporting people on that front. Like actually just we need to focus on education.
Yeah.
Remove all the political stuff. And I think that comes from where the money comes from a lot of times.
You
But
nailed it. You nailed it. So, hospital systems are a business. Educational systems are a business. Everything's becoming more and more a business, right? And it's all about the money.
Yeah.
when really, again, I'm even gonna, I say this often, but I think grades are worthless, right? A, B, C, D, like I constantly have my students asking, like, oh, what grade did I get? What do I need to get an A? Or like, tell me what's on the test. Like, what am I, like that's not learning if we're focusing on these grades, right? The actual education, the transfer of knowledge is kind of getting lost in this broken system. So, yeah, and even one step further, without that transfer of knowledge, it's hard to get the critical thinking. And like, how do you get to a graduate level program and not know how to critically think, right? Whereas problem solving and figuring things out is just part of life. It's not even part of education. So, like, no matter where you are from grade school on, you need to know how to critically think. We need to be focusing more on that, and we know the systems are broken. We just have to figure out ways to, highlight and spotlight the people that are trying to fight the good fight, and get the truth out there and the information out there, and help educate. So
I think it's stop being so focused on people's feelings again. Like
yeah,
we're so focused on not getting our feelings hurt. I'm ready for the pendulum to swing back the other way at this
yeah,
point.
yeah. And it will. I don't know how long it'll take, but that's just what pendulums do, right? They continue to swing back and
Swing
forth
back
and
and
back and
forth.
forth. So yeah, I kind of like the middle road. Like, I like, let's just settle down and slow it down right in the middle there, like, but I don't know, we're getting pretty extreme these days, polar opposite ends. So I don't know. Well, like I said, Jesse, thank you so much for your time. I cannot thank you enough for coming on and having the conversation with us today, and just telling us the real life of everything, just like what it looks like from a patient perspective, because it's super important. And like I said, we don't do this enough. We've had a handful of patients on in our 500 episodes, and I want to try to start getting more on. But your story, like I said, just really is so amazing to me, and I cannot thank you enough. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they support you?
Yeah. First, please, if you are in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, come through the Freedom Lake Norman facility. It's Freedom LKN on all platforms. Would love to have you in. Your first visit's $20, very affordable. Um, and it's just the vibe. You can't beat the vibe. And for my nonprofit, it's Wheel With Me Foundation on all platforms, wheelwithmefoundation.org. For the fitness app, it's Wheel With Me Adapt Fit on all platforms. You can also join our free private Facebook community. For my one-on-one and group coaching, that's Freedom, Longevity, and Wellness. There's a free community on Facebook for that. I also have a community program called the Freedom Fam if anyone wants to join that. And then you can find me at Jesi Stracham, looks like Stracham, on all major platforms.
Awesome. We will put all those links in the show notes so it's easy for everybody to find you. Jesse, thank you again a million times. I cannot wait to see where your journey goes from here, because I just get the sense that it's only just beginning.
Oh, 100%. And thank you so much for having me on here. And if there was a nugget that you took away from this, please like take that nugget and share that with a link
Yeah.
to the episode so people know what to expect, what you gained from it. But share it with a friend. That's how these platforms grow, is by you getting out there and sharing the valuable information. So thank you guys for listening.